While you might think that a small car would produce a fraction of the pollution of a larger lorry, a new study suggests this may not be the case. Diesel cars have been found to produce 10 times more toxic gas than new lorries and buses. Experts say that the concerning results should prompt governments to enforce stricter pollution tests. The study, by researchers from the International Council on Clean Transportation, looked at real-world emission tests on vehicles in Finland and Germany. While the latest diesel lorries and buses were found to produce an average of 210 milligrams of toxic nitrogen oxide per kilometer, diesel cars produced 500 milligrams per kilometer. And because lorries tend to have higher engine load demands than cars, this equates to around 10 times the amount of nitrogen oxide produced. Rachel Moncrief, lead author of the study, said the simple average difference in NOx emissions per kilometer between light-duty and heavy-duty vehicles is startling enough. But on a fuel consumption basis, taking into account the higher engine load demands for trucks and buses, the NOx emissions of diesel cars are 10 times higher than the corresponding measurement values for heavy-duty vehicles. The ICCT says the reason for this huge difference is down to the more rigorous pollution testing that heavier vehicles are subjected to. New diesel cars do go through pollution testing and are required to produce a maximum of 80 milligrams of nitrogen oxide per kilometer. But these tests are usually done in the laboratory, where car manufacturers can use prototypes designed to pass the tests rather than cars on the road. Lorries and buses instead are subjected to random tests while already on the road. The issue follows the Volkswagen emissions cheating scandal, which broke in September 2015. The firm had cheated emissions tests by installing software to ensure prototypes passed laboratory tests, while Volkswagen cars on the road were pumping out huge amounts of toxic nitrogen oxide. Peter Mock, managing director at ICCT, said it would be much better to measure the emissions of ordinary mass production vehicles obtained from customers who have been driving them in an ordinary way. Before this study, little research had compared nitrogen oxide emissions from diesel cars and trucks. In a briefing report, the ICCT said the most likely explanation for this different treatment is that data from a news testing indicates that, in contrast to cars, trucks do not systematically emit significantly more NOx in real-world, everyday operation than they are certified to. And there is a likely explanation for that as well. Emissions from diesel cars and trucks are regulated differently under the Euro standards. Diesel car owners could soon have to pay to drive in 16 cities following a High Court judgment. In November, a High Court judgment ruled the government plans to meet EU air pollution targets do not go far enough and need to be greatly expanded. 6 citywide clean air zones in which owners of large diesel vehicles would be hit with charges to deter them from driving in were already in line to be enforced by 2020 in Birmingham, Leeds, Southampton, Nottingham and Derby, and by 2025 in London. But the High Court judge ruled that plans will not be enough to bring down pollution to within legally binding limits set by the EU, and another 10 cities are now likely to face the pollution tax. Plans originally drawn up but dropped on grounds of cost for clean air zones in Cardiff, Manchester, Newcastle upon Tyne, Liverpool, Bristol, Leicester, Stoke, Coventry, Hull and Sheffield are now expected to be revisited. Prime Minister Theresa May promised she would tackle air pollution and told the Commons, "There is more to do and we will do it. We have been putting extra money into actions that will relieve the issues around air quality, but we recognize that DEFRA Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs now has to look at the judgment that has been made by the courts, and we have to look again at the proposals that we will bring forward." In the landmark ruling, after environmental group Client Earth brought the case against the government, Mr. Justice Garnham ruled that the air quality plan was legally flawed and must be quashed. He said that the government's projections of future emissions were too optimistic and that rather than separate dates for different cities, the government must now achieve compliance by the soonest date possible. He added the government must take steps which mean meeting the value limit is not just possible as likely.